So let's talk about, you were 2 years old when you started gymnastics. Was
Yeah.
that, how did that start? Were your parents just like, we need to start her on something?
Yeah, so I was extremely like hyperactive when I was a kid. And I tried like a bunch of different sports, but the one that I really stuck with was dance and gymnastics. So I started going to like baby classes when I was like 3. But I didn't start doing rhythmic until I was about like 8 years old. And I kind of like quit for like half a year and then came back and I didn't start competing until I was 10. So that's like pretty late for my sport.
And what's the biggest difference between artistic and rhythmic gymnastics? Because you've done both of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a huge difference just because I mean, artistic is more so like large muscle group strength. I mean, they use like, beam bars, floor, vault, all of that. We are just on carpet and we use apparatus. The apparatus is ball, hoop, ribbon, clubs, and then juniors have rope, but they took that out for seniors. And we're more like flexibility based and like small muscle group strength. Um, there's a lot of like control, and also the main difference is we all of our routines are set to music, so everything um has to have a lot of musicality and grace. Yeah.
And then you said that age 10 was kind of on the later end of getting into rhythmic gymnastics.
Yeah.
I
um
mean, your teammates, when did they get into the sport?
Most of my teammates started competing when they were like 6, around then. Just because we have to be so flexible that generally, like you start training that flexibility when you're really, really young. And it's just one of those sports. A lot of like gymnastics or dance-based sports start really, really early on. So yeah, I definitely was probably I was definitely the latest person to start competing and also the latest person to make national team on national team.
And then can you kind of talk me through the pressure of starting something so competitive that early on?
I when I was younger, I don't think I really was aware of that. I wasn't really aware of like the pressure of starting kind of late until I was probably like 14 or 15. And a lot of people that I knew were like making junior national team. And like the first step to making national team is you have to qualify to level 10, which is the like elite level. And I didn't qualify to that. Most people qualified to that in their junior age group, which is goes up to 16, or the year you turn 15, and senior starts the year you turn 16. And I didn't make level 10 um until I believe I was 15 or 16. So I was already a level 9 senior when I made level 10. So I felt like very behind everyone. And like I had this dream of making national team, and like I wasn't sure if that was going to happen after I didn't make it the first 2 times. Um, but yeah, so I definitely felt like I was kind of like behind everyone, but I just kind of had I just had such a love for the sport and such a want to pursue like my own goals that I couldn't give it up.
What was yeah, what was your support system like during that time? Was it just your parents or your coaches, or were there national team representatives that were kind of like, come on, let's get this into gear?
Yeah. So when I made level 10, before I was on national team, really my only support system was like my family and my like teammates. Um, because you're not really on the radar of national team, or at least not that I knew of at the time. But my last year, the year that I did end up making national team when I was 17, um, it was kind of the year that I was going to quit if I didn't make national team, and I didn't make individual national team, and I kind of knew that that was kind of a long shot. I did make it in the top 11 in the country, but at the time, now it's top 12 I think, but at the time it was only top 8. So I knew that going to group national team was my only chance of making national team, and luckily I talked to the head coach of group at national championships, and like they wanted me to come try out and everything. And like it kind of just opened all of the doors to like beyond even my dreams when I was younger.
At that age, when there are essentially middle schoolers competing at the highest level, is there any kind of therapist or sports psychologist who's working with them to kind of make sure that they don't fall to the pressure?
Definitely not. And a lot of girls that peak really early on, just because for a long time it's been the view that rhythmic gymnasts especially peak when they're like 18, 19, 20. Um, a lot of coaches would push their gymnasts to just like be incredible by the time they're like 12 or 13, and a lot of them actually like ended up quitting within a couple of years and burning out completely, or with really bad back and hip injuries and stuff like that. Because before you're on national team at the time, and I believe right now, there's really no resources available to you, like sports psychology, mental health, that kind of thing, like at all. Like you have to do that yourself. I chose to work with a sports psychologist starting when I was like 14 or 15, just because my issue was always like self-doubt. Um, and like when I was younger, I would get really like nervous before competition stage fright wise, but I later on it was just a self-doubt thing. My biggest obstacle was always my own mind. And those resources, like mental health resources, don't become available to you until you make national team. And even when you make national team, like they just now this year, like a couple months ago, made the Team USA like mental health fund, which is applicable to like everyone on Team USA. It's not just like sports based. So they'll like if you don't get in with a therapist who's within the USOPC, they'll like reimburse you for your mental health costs and everything. But that was not a thing before. Like it was either you worked with the team sports psychologists that they had, which a lot of people like were wary about doing, just because everyone went to the same psychologist and they talked to the coaches, and people were scared of like information getting out. There was not really much things available to you in the like early, like a couple of years ago, if you didn't want to work with your like USAG like team sports psychologist. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially now that mental health has become more of a shared narrative as opposed to an anomaly. Do you think that that's what pushed the Olympic and Paralympic Committee to do something?
Yeah, definitely, especially since like Tokyo 2020 was kind of the theme of the whole thing, especially in the US, was like mental health awareness. You saw so many athletes coming out about, mental health struggles and getting help. And you saw in the last couple of years Michael Phelps coming out about struggling with being suicidal and like all of that kind of stuff. And I think just because so many athletes decided to advocate for that and be open about that, just with there's such a huge stigma in sports with experiencing mental health problems. I think there were quite a few cases where just people's mental health was not prioritized and treated well in different sports in Team USA. Like I think they kind of realized that they like had to do something and listen to the athletes, and just make it a bit easier for people to get help, because I mean you're just exposed to so much pressure when you're that level of an athlete, like if you're an Olympic level athlete.
What does it mean to excel in rhythmic gymnastics at such a young age? I mean, what does that look like? And you don't have to like walk me
um
through a practice day. You can just more generally, I mean, what does your life look like?
like your life outside of the gym, or like how they are as
Like
an athlete?
as a whole. I mean, how many hours a week
Okay.
are you practicing? Are you being homeschooled? Are you going to a traditional classroom setting and then practicing after school or before school? I mean, what does that look like?
So it really depends on the athlete. Some people are homeschooled, but I'd say a majority of people do go to regular school. I went to regular school. I was only homeschooled my last year of high school because I had to move to Chicago um, for national team. But um, and are you referring to young gymnasts as in like below like 16, or like
Yeah, well,
higher
let's
level?
start there. I mean,
Okay.
both
Yeah.
prior to high school.
Okay. So, I mean, any high level rhythmic gymnast is going to be training at least 4 hours a day, probably 6 days a week. Um, that's like the norm. So, you're doing your homework on the way to practice and staying up until like 2 a.m., finishing your homework. Normally, you don't really practice before school. That's more like a figure skating thing, but um, definitely no real social life. Your social life is your friends at the gym, and hopefully they're good ones. You definitely miss out on, I mean, in any sport, being an elite athlete at a young age, you miss out on a lot of like core childhood experiences. That's just what you have to sacrifice to get where you want to be. And yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much what your life looks like. It's just eat, sleep, gym, repeat.
And then once you turned 17 and you moved to Chicago to train with the national team, how did that change the perspective of your life? Because up to that point, you were kind of unclear of whether or not it was going to work out.
Yeah, so my whole life like completely changed. So I had to sacrifice a lot in order to like make my jump to national team, and so did most people on my team. Um, so the top training gym, well, the gym that trains the group, the national team group, because we all have to train together, is North Shore Rhythmics in Chicago. And so I originally am from Manhattan Beach, California, and I had lived there all my life. And my dad works in LA. So my dad had to stay in California while I moved with my mom to Chicago and continued my senior year online in school. And, I already knew that I would have to put off college for at least 2 years, because I wanted to try and make it to the Olympics. Um, and, it was just a brand new place. And it was a lot of work to get like my school to be okay with this, because they made like a special exception for me, and that was something that a lot of my teammates struggled with, was when they were still in person, like normal high school, while we were like training and competing internationally. They had to get permission to like leave school, which is a lot harder than you would think it would be when you're a national team athlete competing for the country. Like, they're doing their homework in Italy after we compete, and leaving school for 2 weeks and coming back and having like a final exam. So it's a lot to balance. And it also, my life just looked very different because I was solely now just doing gymnastics like all the time. Like, my training hours increased. I was training like 6 to 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. And working with more, physical therapists, sports psychologists. It just like kind of really just increased the amount of gymnastics that I'm going to experience in my life.
When you say workout, what kind of workouts were you doing? I mean, were they team workouts with the other four of your team, or was it individualized?
Do you mean like trainings?
Yeah, so individual like body movement
Mm-hmm.
workouts.
Yeah. So, I mean, our typical training day, we always train all together. Unless you have like an injury and you go and work with a PT and you have to do exercises, we are always training all together. So there's only 5 people who compete at one time, but our team consists of like 7 to 8 people, just because injuries and stuff. Um, so you're also in a constant battle to be in the routine. Sometimes it's more than 8 people, but um, so typically, like, we'd come to the gym, do a couple PT exercises, whatever we needed to do, and then we'd start warm up together. So we do everything synchronized, just because the base of our sport is like being synchronized with each other. We go to the bathroom together, we do everything together so that we can stay as together as possible. And so we'd start warm up. That would go on for about like 40 minutes, and then we'd stretch for like 10-15 minutes, which is like, doing over splits and flexibility things. Um, we'd check our elements in our routines, which are just like body difficulties. And then we'd start taking apparatus and running our routines with music. And then we normally have like a cool down at the end of training, and then usually more PT to keep our body healthy. So yeah, that's normally what our like typical day would look like. And
Are you
sometimes
no
we would have double trainings. So yeah.
are you an only child?
Yeah.
This is a huge difference then, because suddenly you have a ton of sisters.
Yeah.
Was that
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
strange?
I mean, yeah, definitely, because I mean, I'm an only child, but even when I was competing as an individual, um, the thing that I lacked as an individual competitor was I was not super like just cutthroat, ruthless. Like I just don't have that personality. I'm very intense when I compete, but I just like to be friends with everyone. Like I don't like any I don't like drama. I don't like having bad blood. So that's one of the reasons why I work really well in group, because right away, like all I want to do is like lift people up and like bring my team together. And like I love working, like the feeling of going on the carpet with four other people next to you is so different than going on the carpet like alone. I remember the first time I competed in group, me and one of my best friends on the team, Lisa, we both came to group at the same time, and it was both of our first time competing in group at like a small national competition. I remember like afterwards we were like, that was so cool. Like I like wasn't even nervous. And of course, as time goes on, you do start to get nervous again. Um, but yeah, it was really cool having. It's just really cool having like such a like we have such a healthy relationship with each other. I see a difference from the U.S. team, from a lot of other teams internationally. Like we're never rude to each other. We like don't have major drama or issues. Like all we want to do is like lift each other up. Even if people are having bad practice days, like we try our best not to like get annoyed at them and get mad at them, like because it's just not going to help them do better. It's only going to make them feel worse. So it's just like we just became like literal sisters, and they're like the closest people to me in my life. And I had never had that before to that level. So yeah.
Was it difficult to have to rely on those other people? Because
Um,
sometimes, I mean, when you're used to working by yourself as your own singular unit, adding other people and other mentalities, even if you do get along really well with them, is difficult. It's just a change of pace.
yeah, so I think for me, definitely like I am naturally like an extremely like I'm just a really hard worker, and like I overwork myself sometimes. So, and that is one of the things that makes me successful, but not every athlete is naturally like that. Like you can be an incredible athlete and not have that personality where like you're like a crazy hard worker. You could have the personality where you maybe don't practice that well, but you compete amazing and like are super consistent and like very level headed. So like there's a lot, we had like a lot of different personalities mixing in that way, and we all had brought our own strengths. But it's definitely difficult when like, maybe there was a day when like someone wasn't at 100%, and like you always have those days where it feels like there's someone who's like bringing the team down. Like we've all been the person that's bringing the team down, but like that's always a thing that's difficult to get through, and like learn how to bring those people up back to their 100% level without like being rude. Um and yeah, so that was probably definitely like personalities mixing wise, that was something that I had to get used to, because not everyone has the same way of working as you do, and like that's okay. But yeah, I was like, you're not necessarily used to that, and it can be frustrating. But yeah, so that was.
How long has this group been working together?
So we've had a couple people come and go, but let's see. Four of us had been on the team um like the whole 4 years, or I came in after the first year that they competed together, but like essentially four of us have been on the team like the whole time, throughout the whole cycle. um Camilla and Lily, they had been on individual national team, and because we lost some team members over quarantine, they ended up stepping forward, and we brought them in to complete our team because we didn't have enough people coming back from quarantine. So they were like brand new, kind of close to the Olympics. So that was definitely like they adapted so quickly, which is like crazy to me. But yeah.
How in sync do you think that you guys actually are off the carpet?
We are like extremely in sync, at least when we were like living together, like extremely in sync off the carpet. I mean, like our cycles would sync, like everything. A lot of us would have like similar, like going through similar emotional things at the same time. Um, a really interesting thing was that this is still sort of during practice, but one of the ways that we would know that, like, after we like maybe made a new routine, and we would know that it was starting to like get in a good place when at the end of the routine, when we finished it, we would all be breathing synchronized. So like when we are training together, like when we're training a routine, our breath synchronizes like without us knowing. It's like really crazy. I remember the first time it happened, we like looked around and we were like, it's crazy.
Wow, that's a really interesting thing to pick up on. But I mean, I guess that's kind of a prereq to competing at such a high level.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting.
Do you have any pre-competition rituals that either you do or you guys do as a team ahead of any competitions?
Yeah. We have a lot. um, so some of the main things that we do. So my team is like primarily Russian. I'm not Russian, but Russians are very superstitious. So they have a lot of them have a lot of little superstition things that they need to do. So one of the things was before we leave for a competition, um, we all would go into one like hotel room together, and we all have to like sit down for like a couple seconds, and like some people just sit in silence, some people say a prayer, and then you say like with God in Russian, and we like get up and you're like not allowed to look in the mirror when you leave, and like there's all this stuff. But and then when we're at the gym, like before we go on to compete, we have a mascot. His name's Marty. He's this little zebra stuffed animal, and we all like hold a leg of him, and we scream, "Hey, hey, USA, let's go all the way." And we kind of like have a little talk before, and then we all like kiss him. And then also right before we compete, we all like hold hands and we take like one breath together and like kind of just tell each other, what we need to focus on in this routine, like get on the same page, like encourage each other. Um, we all hug each other before we go. Some people like kiss their apparatus. Yeah, and then my coach, she does a little like thing to us before every time we would compete. She would just like kiss us all on the head and say all good, and then give us a little tap on the butt before we go and compete. So yeah, we have a lot of little like rituals.
Do those things help with your self-doubt?
I mean, just in general, I think rituals are a lot of athletes have rituals before they compete. And I think they're a very healthy thing because it just brings familiarity before you go on to the carpet, and it just reduces your stress a little bit. And like for me personally, like I had personal things that like I just needed to do before I compete. And the things that like helped me with my just make sure that I'm in the right headspace before I compete. I have like a notebook that has like affirmations that I would like change here and there. But usually when I changed into my like Leo, I would go in the bathroom and just like read over them, just to boost my confidence. And before I'd compete, I'd kind of just like take a few deep breaths and like close my eyes and just like let my mind go blank and imagine like all of the energy in my body like going into a ball of light above my head. It's kind of like a meditation thing because I also meditate pretty regularly, especially when I'm training. Like meditation and visualization for me like changed the game. It helped me be so much more consistent and so much more calm, and like really brought me to my like peak like flow state. And I know a lot about other athletes use that as well. So yeah.
I feel like every single episode I talk about visualization because it's so important. And so many athletes that I've talked to have not only mentioned it in passing, but put a huge emphasis on it. How
Mhm.
important is that part of it, especially when you have a set routine that you're doing?
yeah, I'm just gonna turn this light off because it's flickering. Okay. Yeah, so visualization, I've honestly been doing that since I was like probably like 13 or 14. But I started doing it in a much more like intentional, like I would meditate beforehand kind of way when I got older. And I just noticed when I am disciplined about, like, you know, if it's like 2 weeks out from a big competition like world championships or something like that, if I do that every day before I go to training, like I do a focus meditation and then, you know, visualize my routines. And also it's not just like visualizing the routines, like what was important for me and what my team started doing was like really like imagining the feeling of like having a good routine or like qualifying for the Olympics. Just imagining the feeling of the things that you want to happen going right. That's kind of a little bit of a manifestation technique, but you know, it helps. And yeah, so that was like just really 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 important for me. And like especially if you're injured, um just when you can't be training physically, it really helps your muscle memory actually, even if you're doing it in your head. So yeah.
What is the most common injury that you would have to rehab from?
um so in rhythmic gymnastics, the most common like major injuries are hip, back, definitely like knees, ankles, like broken feet, torn meniscus. I had a torn meniscus, my teammates had a torn meniscus, I have a fracture in my back. um yeah, those are definitely like the most common injuries, and like tendonitis, that kind of thing, because we're always up on our toes again.
And then when you are putting together the choreography for a routine, how many people are working on that process? Do you as the athlete have any input on what the moves are? And I mean, what's the kind of chain of command that goes through creating a routine?
So normally we bring in a choreographer from another country. We've worked with like some from Russia and Bulgaria, and they'll come and they'll work with us for a couple days, or sometimes we'll have like a dance choreographer come in. Um, so we'll work with them for a couple days. We usually choose like just 5 to learn the routine because it's hard to switch people in and out when we're actually learning a routine. And then the other people will be on the side. And as we got older, like the last 2 years, definitely, and obviously our coach would be there too and helping with that thing, because it's basically all about like putting together like the dance aspect and like the musicality aspect with the actual like difficulty and points that we need to put in our routine, and like just figuring out how to put it together the best way. And as we got older, we would definitely get a little bit more input. Like, you know, the choreographer would ask us like, okay, what do you like? What do you feel during this music? Like what, like just go and like dance, and like, I'm going to choose something, and like, we'd make suggestions and stuff like that. So, but it's definitely more so involved with like the choreographer and the coach with that and putting that kind of stuff together.
What has been your favorite routine?
Mhm.
I'm
I
gonna put I'm
think
gonna put you on the spot right now.
I think my favorite routine that we had was, um honestly, I think our ball routine in 2020, in the last year, or 2021. Just because we really wanted to have like classic, like fun American music. And we just like, our coach found this piece of music. Actually, it was Bon Jovi, It's My Life, and it was like a remix of it. And it was just so perfect for coming back from quarantine, because the lyrics were like, you know, it's now or never, and just all about like working hard and like not giving up. Um, and I think we all just connected so much to that music, and it was just such a fun routine. I mean, the code of points that year made it so that dance was not at the forefront. It was like a lot of difficulty, but like music wise and feeling wise, that was definitely my favorite routine. Because I definitely preferred when we were able to have more dance in our routines. Um, but yeah, that was probably my favorite routine.
Can you talk me through prior to 2021, 2018 and 2019? all of the silvers that you guys accrued. I mean, that was a really cool period of your life.
Yeah, you mean at like Pan American Games? Yeah, I mean, we were definitely hoping for gold. There's a lot of politics in play in the Pan American Union, but either way, like getting silver at the Pan American Games was like it was just really awesome. Um, just it felt like a mini Olympics, so it was a really like I think a lot of us, especially for me, like when I went to Pan American Games, I was like, okay, I like really want to go to the Olympics now because like if this is so fun, like just imagine what the Olympics is going to be like because you have all different sports. And I've talked about this before, but like when we got our silver medals in Peru, when we came back into the dining hall, like we were like wearing our silver medals because a lot of athletes would do that. They would come into the dining hall wearing their medals, and like just like the whole dining hall like applauds you, and like everyone from Team USA is like cheering you on. It's so cool. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I keep looking at this map behind you. How many countries do you have marked off?
I just don't know. Um, I don't know how many countries I've been to, honestly. It's definitely more than like probably more than like 14, but we also go back to the same place a lot of times. But yeah, I've been to most countries in Eastern Europe and a lot of Western Europe and South America. So yeah,
Is that
yeah.
because your teammates are Russian, or do you just
No, that's
compete
just
over there
where
a
the
lot?
competitions are.
Oh, okay.
Like the World Cups and Grand Prix, there's a series of Grand Prix and World Cups every year, and they are just in different countries all around the world. So like when our season starts, we are traveling the whole time.
What are the parameters of your season? I mean, do you go like from January to August or January to December? I mean, how
Yeah, so
frequently are you competing?
we go normally our competitions start in February and our last competition is usually in September. There's one time it was in October, but normally February to September for us. But we're still training in our off season. Like we don't have like an off season training wise. Yeah.
Where's the coolest place you've competed and why?
Um let's see. Okay. I think my favorite place that I've competed, it's probably well, the most like interesting country, like different country I've been to is Azerbaijan for sure. Like it's I didn't even know that country existed before I went there. I've been there like 4 times now. Um it's very, very unique. It's right between the Middle East and Eastern Europe. So it's just like nothing you've ever seen before. But my favorite place that I've competed in, like the crowd wise in the competition, is probably between Italy and Spain. Just because I mean Italy is Italy. That's like my favorite country of all time in general, like the food and the people. But both Italy and Spain, like the crowd is just so passionate and loud, and like I love that. I love competing in front of a big crowd. It just gives us so much energy, which sucked for 2021 because we had like we had like only one small competition that had audience in it. So yeah.
And we're about to talk about the 2020-2021 experience because there was no way you could have scripted what happened.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so when the Olympics were canceled, that was really hard because we had been like trying like to as full out as we can like train over Zoom, but we couldn't train together, which is like individuals, like you can do some training together. A lot of other sports, I mean training on your own, like a lot of other sports, they have, they can, if running, they can run outside on track. It doesn't really like affect their training, but like we could not train together and we were out of training for like 3.5 months, which is the longest we've ever not trained. And also compared to other countries, most other countries had like 2 weeks where they weren't training. So they were actually training through quarantine. And we were not. So, and also just like during that time, like just there was so much uncertainty about like whether the Olympics were actually going to happen. Like at this point, I was supposed to go to college the next year. So I had to decide to push my college back another year, third year. Everyone had to do that if they were already accepted into colleges. It was just hard because we had already like, we kind of had like planned our life out towards that point. And well, life often does not listen to your plans. So yeah, but definitely a lot of us struggled mentally over quarantine just because there was just so much uncertainty about the Olympics, and a lot of people were weighing whether they should just quit or if they should continue, whether they wanted to do another year of that training. And so we lost 3 team members over quarantine, but one of them ended up coming back. And but also for us over quarantine, there was a lot of positives that came out of it because just in general, like we had kind of, I don't know how to say this, like, giving too much away. I need to figure out how to say this. Well, okay, so the environment that we were training in pre-2020 was definitely not the most healthy thing in the world. Just in rhythmic gymnastics, there are huge issues with, you know, mental abuse, like that kind of stuff, just in gymnastics as well. I mean, there's a whole uprising going on in artistic gymnastics about it, and it's finally starting in rhythmic gymnastics as well. Just eating disorders, mental health issues are like rabid in rhythmic gymnastics, and not a lot of people talk about it. And it kind of came to a point where it needed to be addressed. And over quarantine, we kind of had a moment where we all learned just so much more about each other, and we became much more open with my coach, and we gained, like, we kind of just vowed that when we were going to come back, like certain things were going to change and it was going to be a better environment for us. And that ended up happening. Like there was just a new level of like respect and love for one another, and just like motivation and like healthy coaching methods and healthy training methods. And that was something that we really gained as a plus through quarantine. And I'm glad that I got to see that happen while I was still in the sport, because I didn't ever think that I would see something like that happen while I was still training and competing. Like I thought that I would have to, I wanted to help with that movement and like help get rid of abusive coaching methods, because this is just the way that things have done for a long time. It's not always intentional. It's just the only thing that anyone knows what to do, like especially older coaches. And to have such an incredible coach who always told us that like the more she learns, she realizes the less she knows, and she always wants to learn more from other coaches and other sports and everything. Like that's one of the reasons why she's such an incredible coach, because she's always willing to learn and do what's best for her athletes. So yeah.
Was there any trepidation going into conversations like that where you needed something to change, but you were worried that it wasn't going to, even once you spoke about it?
Definitely. We were terrified to talk about this kind of stuff. And like, I remember the first time that I was open with my coach about like my personal mental health struggles, like terrifying, because it's just not something that, especially at the time when I opened up, like not a thing that is talked about openly. And, I thought I was going to get kicked off of the team. And just like, yeah, I just had no idea that it was actually quite common and okay to be an elite athlete and struggle with anxiety and depression and things like that. Like a lot of people do. So going into having a conversation with like your coach and like people in USAG, like it's definitely scary. But I think the one thing at that point was like, we only had, there were like 5 of us left. So it was kind of like, we needed to have this conversation. And this was a time when we knew that we had nothing to lose. So yeah, that was kind of what it was. It was like, we we only had 5 people left and we needed more people anyways. So they kind of had to do something. So yeah.
How appreciative of your coaching staff were you that they responded in exactly the way that you would hope they would?
We were like, I just know we were all much happier like that coming year. It was we were like just endlessly grateful that they took it seriously. And yeah, I just think none of us thought that we would actually see that kind of thing happen. And we just all became so much more open with each other and our coaches, and it really improved like the way that we trained and our relationships with each other.
And then you went to the Olympics. And
Yeah.
that's a nice way to cap it off, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I definitely was like, I never thought that I would make it to the Olympics, and it wasn't my main dream until like 2 years before the Olympics. Like I just did not think that, I don't know, I just didn't think that it was realistic. And I also have been much more successful having like small goals and not focusing on like huge big things, and just focusing on like being the best version of myself every day. That was what really helps me to like improve every day. And like, just as long as my motivations are coming from inside myself, it's much more long standing than having your only motivations be material goals. Because like, I've experienced having no more motivation in yourself and having these material goals mean nothing. So um so yeah, it was just it was surreal that we ended up qualifying to the Olympics and going, and one of the best experiences of our lives.
And you almost didn't even get there. You almost retired.
Yeah, a lot of us did almost retire. And really going, we didn't know until about like a month before the Olympics that we even qualified. And there was uncertainty about the Olympics happening until about like 3 months before they happened. So the whole thing, it was just like, we just had to kind of shut off the news and like all of that stuff, and just like, you had to just keep going for yourself, because it's like it would have been so bad if we had decided to retire and then the Olympics happens, and we just because we thought that they weren't going to happen and they ended up happening. Like, that would have been the most heartbreaking thing ever. So I think that was why a lot of us decided to stay. Yeah.
And then once you got to the Summer Olympics, I mean, what was that experience like? Was it an overall positive one? I mean, did it live up to the expectation?
Yeah, it was definitely like beyond our expectations. It was amazing. I mean, obviously we wish that there could have been audience and like our parents could have been there watching us, but overall, like, it was just so much fun. I mean, obviously it was very stressful, like extremely stressful. I don't think anything can prepare you for like going to your first Olympics, and just the pressure and the mental stress that comes with that, because like you just can't even wrap your head around it. The only thing you can really do is just try and tell yourself that like this is just another competition, but at the same time, like, it's not. um but it just, there's so many people that you meet, and the village is just so cool, and everyone is rooting for you. And especially at the 2020 Olympics, like, everyone had been through a very similar thing, so everyone like knew what what other athletes had been through, so you could just like talk to anyone and just have like really awesome conversations. And yeah, it was awesome.
I read that your team was only the third rhythmic gymnastics team from the US ever, and the first full team ever sent to the
Yeah.
Olympics from the United States.
Yeah. Yeah.
How incredible of a statistic is that to be a part of?
Yeah, my team made a lot of history. Like, we in 2019, we were the first time ever that the US group has qualified in the top 10 in the world, and that ended up being why we qualified to the Olympics. And yeah, going into the Olympics, that it was the first time that we also had two individuals. We've only ever had one individual go to the Olympics along with a group, and in general, we've only ever had one individual at an Olympic Games. But we had the maximum amount of athletes that a rhythmic gymnastics team can have. We had 2 individuals, and then we had the group that qualified from world championships. And aside from the very first team, and I think it was like 1984 or something like that, when there was only like 9 groups in the whole of the field was very small, or 9 or 10 groups. The field was very, very small. Our finish like 11th in the Olympic Games, even though we were definitely hoping that we could make finals, I think we were quite happy with how we finished, because that is the highest, aside from the time that that team, they placed 10th, but it was not a full field. Like us placing 11th is the highest that the US has ever placed aside from that. So we were just really happy with that.
And then do you have an issue now that you're in college doing some very interesting coursework, by the way?
Yeah.
Do you have an issue separating what is very artistic from what is very logical and logistical? Because what you're doing is kind of using both sides of your brain for very different things. Is that ever an issue?
You know, I'm retired, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just talking like throughout your life. I mean,
Oh, okay.
do you see that as a difference?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'm studying astrophysics. Um, it's very hard, but it's really cool. And just also just like having gone to the Olympics, it's opened like so many doors for me in general. It just kind of gives you a new level of respect to other people. So I've been able to get a lot of really cool opportunities already. But yeah, so I have always been interested in outer space since I was really young. And in the movie Interstellar was kind of what made me really, really want to study like the physics and the science of outer space, especially like black holes. Like that's what I want to study, black holes. And I mean, it was definitely on the back burner while I was training, but I knew that that was what I wanted to do coming into college. Um, I'm definitely like, my strong suit is definitely not math. So like I'm actually a very like logical, pragmatic person in general. I am creative in like other ways, but thinking wise, I'm actually like very logical. Um so the math is hard and it doesn't come naturally to me. It takes a lot of work, but I'm kind of willing to do that in order to do what I want to do, because you know I like being challenged. I don't like doing things that are like really easy for me, because if I really wanted to, I could, I don't know, be an English major, because English and writing and those kind of things, they come very easily to me. But I also do want to do a psych minor, because I was between being a psych major and astrophysics, and I just decided I'll do a psych minor because I'm just really passionate about, like, I want to in the future work as much as I can with USAG and the USOPC with just mental health things and that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah.
Do you think that that started because of the inequities that you saw, or do you think that that was just kind of trying to fill a personal goal?
Um, like wanting to work in mental health.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the reason why I became just really passionate about like the mental health movement, and because a lot of people go through mental health struggles, but they don't really have a want to help others and stuff, which is totally fine. Like keeping, you know, just wanting to get through it yourself. But just having gotten through what I got through in 2018 with like a lot of anxiety and depression, and having come out of it and seeing like a lot of people around me struggling and not saying anything, and just with the rise of the mental health movement and seeing just how taboo it was to talk about, and um, that was what really made me want to help other people get through it, because when I was going through it, I didn't think that I would end up where I am, and I didn't think I would get through it. And there's a lot of people who think that, and like all I want to do is like help others realize that they can, and get more resources, and have this be more of a normal thing to talk about. Um and I also like, I love writing. Writing became something that was like very cathartic for me when I was going through everything. And I've continued writing, and like I write a lot of poetry and things like that. And like I would love to find a way to use that. You know, I've started writing much more openly on my Instagram and like posting some of my poetry. So I'd love to do as much as I can to like use that tool. Like I've been thinking of publishing a poetry book. So like, I don't know. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
Well, one of what brought me to you was that Instagram post. You wrote a small,
Which,
a short story in the
which
caption.
one?
The one, it was a picture of you competing, and it was just you talking about how you almost retired.
Yeah.
And then now that you are retired, the process of unlinking your identity as an athlete to who you are now. Can you
Mhm.
kind of work through the process of laying that story out via Instagram? I mean, what led up
Yeah.
to that?
Um, I've just in general, I've been wanting to, now that I'm retired, like I've just been wanting to be a lot more open about just the whole things that I've been through, and, you know, how I'm doing and that kind of thing. Um, and like this, the whole process of like me retiring, because I really only decided like finally, I haven't even like fully announced it on Instagram, but I'm going to eventually.
Oh, we have
Um,
breaking news.
I think a lot of people like assume, but I really didn't like decide fully that I was going to retire until like probably like October, September, because I was still kind of like, maybe it, you know, maybe I'll go for the next Olympics. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just going to start college, see how it goes. But you know, I just kind of realized I don't really have, I've fulfilled everything that I needed to fulfill. If I went back to another Olympics, I would probably just be chasing another, like that feeling again, just another high, which you can't just go around life chasing highs. Like if you have no, I don't think I have enough motivation to want to do all of that again. Um, I feel fulfilled with what I've done. So there's that. And then I'm definitely still going, and I will be going through the transition process for like a while. Because it's just like, it's very hard to like explain and put into words, but when the only thing you've ever really known is going towards this one big goal of the Olympics, if you think of it in the long run, like I went there when I was 21 years old. I still have like the entire rest of my life ahead of me. And to never have really realized that like there's going to be a part of my life when I'm not going to have that huge goal that I'm working towards, it's very hard to wrap your head around. And it's, you know, it's a grief process. It's like, it's literally grieving the loss of like I don't have my teammates with me anymore. Like just the sport that I've been so used to doing all day every day and has been a huge part of my identity, I don't have that anymore. um and you know, I have done a lot of work to find my identity outside of gymnastics, luckily, while I was in the sport still in my last like couple of years. But that's still inevitably, it's okay, like that is a huge part of your identity. And you know, I had never really fully realized that like there's going to be a whole rest of part of my life where I'm not competing and training and doing gymnastics. Like gymnastics is not the only thing in life. So it was definitely a really rough first quarter for me, like mentally. And luckily, like I have a lot of people, I have made some really close friends here at UC Santa Cruz, and just like parents and like psychologists and stuff, like just making sure that, you know, I'm okay, and like I'm making like structure for myself, because that's another big thing, is like you're used to your days just being planned out for you. Like you get up, you eat breakfast at the same time every morning, you go to training, you take a nap, you have second training, you go to sleep, and you do it all over again. And I don't have that structure anymore. My day, I can do whatever I want with it. So especially with classes being online. So you know, it's just like it's still a process that I'm going through, but I've kind of like, I'm starting to get the hang of it. And you know, I'm excited now for the things that I'm going to do with this career. Like I just got a fellowship for the summer that's paid for, like it's a research fellowship for astrophysics for like minorities in STEM. So like I'm starting to see like other opportunities take off, like other doors open, and that's like given me a lot of like just a lot of like encouragement and feel much better with like how this transition is going. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the athletes that I talk to go from sport every single day to this kind of in between haze, like what am I outside of athletics, but also what am I
Mhm.
working toward now? Like those are
Yeah.
two different conversations, but you had those conversations were kind of being made for you by virtue of you
Mhm.
going to college.
Yeah. I mean, yes, but also like I think the thing that I'm still trying to figure out is like how to translate the like, gymnastics like set my soul on fire. And I'm a very passionate person. And so I'm still trying to find that next thing because I'm not in the place in my, at all in my place in my career in astrophysics where I am actually doing physical work yet. Like I'm a freshman. So um it's like I'm definitely trying to explore trying different things in general just to keep that like part of myself alive. Um there's definitely there has been a lot of times where it has felt just really like what is going on. Like there's definitely a like post-Olympic depression, like just plummet of adrenaline. you know I didn't work out for like 3 months after the Olympics at all. Like that's just crazy to like for someone who's been working out for so long. And I got really sick in my first quarter, so I couldn't really work out there either. So I'm like slowly starting to like figure out how I want to work out. Like just there's a difference between like working out for like, Olympic athlete level working out and working out like just for yourself and like figuring out like, okay, what does my body like actually want to do instead of it being told what to do. So yeah, that's like an interesting thing that I've been exploring.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, with any athlete, it's an identity issue. I feel like
Mhm.
every episode that I do has some kind of underpinnings of identity issue, but I think that on the surface you seem to be dealing with it quite well. Am I
Yeah,
reading
I
that correctly?
yeah, I mean, I had like an identity crisis in like 2018. So I really like figured out who I am as a person outside of my sport. I still had a little bit of an identity crisis, I guess, like just like here and there. I wouldn't say that it was like really, really bad. It was not what I had experienced in the past, which I'm glad that I kind of went through that because it prepared me a little bit for when I wasn't going to have sport. Um, but yeah, so I'm good. Like I know who I am outside of my sport. And like I know that there's a lot of parts of me that make me me aside from rhythmic gymnastics, even though that is a huge part of me. And like it's going to take a long time for that like hole to be filled, but like that's okay.
What are your other teammates doing? And what is the lifespan of a gymnast in terms of career? I mean, how many years normally
So
do they stay in the sport?
so most people like national team level, people who go to the Olympics in the US, normally you retire around anywhere from 18 to 22. Uh, it really depends. Just because it's not a college sport. Um, at the time, we did not get paid. They've now started giving a stipend monthly for national team members and people who have like more for people who have gone to the Olympics. But it's not a whole lot, so it's not something that you can like live off of. So like at this point, you need help from your parents to do the sport, and you can only rely on your parents for so long. Um, so I think that is one main reason why people don't go later. But finally, USAG and the rhythmic world is starting to realize that you actually peak in your like early to mid 20s, not in your late teen years and like early 20s. It can go around like 25. Um, so in other countries, they are, much better taken care of financially and they're government funded. The main difference is that they're government funded. In the US, Olympic sports are not government funded. And so other athletes, they will end up retiring anywhere from probably like anywhere from like 19 to 25, 26. But there are a couple people in group from other countries who there's like 2 gymnasts from Russia who are still in group and they're like 30, which is just crazy to me because I don't know what they're doing. But yeah.
And then is there anything else as we wind down that you wanted to talk about that you think that we missed? Talking about anything that is coming up for you that we can support in any way. I normally say if there's anything that you want to link down, any causes you want to support, I can put them in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm not really working with any like associations right now, so
Okay.
not really. Just just like my socials and stuff.
Yeah. And then just before we exit, is there anything else that you wanted to say about your journey or what's next for you? The floor is yours. If not, that's totally fine too.
Yeah, not really.
Awesome. So this episode will come out on the 12th. So 2 days from now. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And then if I can just get, I think you can just DM them to me a picture of you that I can use for social media. It can either be a headshot of you or you in action.
Definitely.
And I'll get back out to you once this is published.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for hanging out with me.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.